experiment. He started to shed the persona he'd adopted and embrace his own experiences, his own voice, his own truth.
It's like he finally felt permission to be himself on stage,
Yeah.
to talk about the things that matter to him, to be vulnerable, to be raw, to be unapologetically Richard Pryor.
Exactly. And this is where his comedy takes a sharp turn. He starts tackling controversial topics like racism, police brutality.
Welcome to Witter. Who Has Time to Read? The podcast that brings deep dives for busy minds. Listen to AI hosts Jane and Dane and get ready to unpack the world's most captivating books in just a fraction of the time. Whether commuting, working out, or just squeezing in a quick break, we deliver key insights, thought-provoking themes, and takeaways you can carry into your day. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Plus, use our links in the description to purchase this book. Your support helps us bring more engaging book discussions to you. Listen and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Who has time to read? You do, with Witter.
Welcome back to Witter, your one-stop shop for deep dives for busy minds.
Yeah.
You know we love getting lost in a good book, but who actually has the time these days?
Right.
That's where we come in, bringing you the juiciest bits without the hours of page turning.
Exactly.
And this month we're celebrating Black voices and sharing stories that illuminate the Black experience.
Absolutely. Some incredible stories out there.
So today we're diving deep into Richard Pryor's autobiography,
Oh, classic.
Prior Convictions and Other Life Sentences.
Quite a title.
It really is.
It is. This one is a roller coaster ride through Pryor's life, told with his signature raw honesty and dark humor. We get the full picture: his chaotic upbringing, his meteoric rise to fame, those battles with addiction, and ultimately his search for identity and meaning.
Wow. Yeah. It's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
So let's set the stage. The book opens in 1940s Peoria, Illinois. Pryor's childhood was anything BOT ordinary. He grew up in a brothel run by his own family. Imagine that environment shaping your worldview.
I mean, it's almost hard to fathom, isn't it? But Pryor doesn't shy away from those gritty details. He paints a vivid picture of this world. And what's fascinating is how he uses humor to cope.
Yes.
Even as a kid, he's cracking jokes, finding a way to connect with people and navigate his chaotic surroundings.
It's true. He talks about making his family laugh while covered in, well, let's just say it involves a crib and an intoxicated relative.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
It's one of those stories that's funny, but also reveals a deeper truth. You know, he's using humor as a defense mechanism, a way to deflect from the pain and dysfunction surrounding him.
Absolutely. And those early experiences really lay the groundwork for his comedic style. Think about it. Growing up in a brothel, you're exposed to all walks of life, all sorts of characters.
Right.
You're constantly absorbing those interactions, the language, the nuances. It's almost like comedic fodder is being thrown at him left and right.
Wow, that's a really good point. You know, he also had a complicated relationship with his parents, right?
Incredibly complicated, yeah. His father was physically abusive, and Pryor constantly found himself in trouble with the law as a youth.
Wow.
His mother wasn't around much. These hardships could have easily broken him, but Pryor had this incredible resilience. He took those painful experiences and channeled them into his comedic voice. He was able to find humor in the darkest corners of his life.
It's true. It's like he's saying, if I don't laugh, I'll cry. And by sharing his experience through comedy, he's making a connection with audiences who might have gone through similar struggles. It's this raw, relatable humor that made him so popular.
Exactly. He's not afraid to be vulnerable, to expose his flaws. And that resonates with people. It makes his comedy feel authentic, real. And it's important to remember that Pryor's coming of age happened during a time of intense racial segregation in America. He was experiencing the world as a Black man in a society that was often hostile and unjust. So those early encounters with racism, prejudice, even violence, they all fed into his comedic perspective.
Yeah. He even recounts a harrowing encounter with a pedophile. These are difficult stories to read, but they offer a glimpse into the realities of Pryor's world. And it's interesting how he uses comedy to confront these issues head on. He's not shying away from the pain or the ugliness, but he's finding a way to make people laugh, even as he's shedding light on these societal problems.
It's a powerful way to make a statement. He's using humor as a weapon to challenge the status quo, to expose hypocrisy, and to force people to confront uncomfortable truths.
Yeah.
And in doing so, he's paving the way for other Black comedians to tackle these issues in their own work.
Absolutely. So we've got Pryor navigating a difficult childhood, using humor as a shield and a sword.
Right.
But eventually he leaves Peoria, right?
He does. Looking for a fresh start, he joins the army. It's a journey that's both hilarious and sobering, and ultimately it leads him down the path towards stand-up comedy.
Wow. So in the beginning, he's emulating popular Black comics like Red Fox.
Right.
But you can sense that he's searching for his own unique voice.
Absolutely. He's trying to figure out who he is as a comedian, how to translate his experiences into something original and impactful. And it's not until he moves to Berkeley, California in the late 1960s that he truly starts to break free.
Ah, Berkeley. At that time, it was a hub for the counterculture movement. There was this energy of social change, of challenging norms and embracing individuality. How did that environment influence his comedy?
It was a pivotal moment for Pryor, being in Berkeley surrounded by this atmosphere of questioning authority and pushing boundaries.
Right.
It gave him the freedom to experiment. He started to shed the persona he'd adopted and embrace his own experiences, his own voice, his own truth.
It's like he finally felt permission to be himself on stage, to talk about the things that mattered to him, to be vulnerable, to be raw, to be unapologetically Richard Pryor.
Exactly. And this is where his comedy takes a sharp turn. He starts tackling controversial topics like racism, police brutality, his personal struggles with addiction, and his complicated relationships. He's not holding back. He's not sugarcoating anything. He's laying it all out there. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
And that rawness, that honesty connected with audiences on a deeper level. He wasn't just telling jokes. He was sharing his truth, and people responded to that authenticity.
Absolutely. And think about the time period, the late 1960s, early 1970s. The civil rights movement was in full swing. The Vietnam War was raging. There was this sense of disillusionment, of anger, of frustration with the system. And here comes Richard Pryor, speaking truth to power, using humor to dismantle the very institutions that were oppressing people.
He was revolutionary. He was breaking barriers, shattering taboos, and paving the way for a whole new generation of comedians to come. He became a voice for the voiceless, especially for the Black community. He was talking about things that people were feeling but couldn't articulate. And he did it with this blend of wit, anger, and vulnerability that was just captivating.
It's important to remember the context of the Black experience in America at that time.
Yeah.
The fight for civil rights, the ongoing struggle against systemic racism. These were issues that Pryor was living and breathing. He wasn't just telling jokes. He was reflecting the realities of his community, the pain, the frustration, but also the resilience and the humor that helped them get through it.
And it wasn't always pretty. He was raw. He was unfiltered. He used language that some people found offensive, but it was always real. It was always coming from a place of truth.
And that's what made him so groundbreaking.
Right.
He was challenging the norms of what comedy could be, of what a Black performer could say on stage.
Yeah.
He refused to be censored, to be put in a box.
Right.
And in doing so, he opened the door for other Black comedians to express themselves authentically without compromise.
There's this one story in the book that really struck me. Pryor talks about traveling to Africa. He goes there expecting to connect with his heritage, his roots. But what he finds is a deeper understanding of himself, of his own Black identity, and the lasting impacts of slavery.
That journey was a turning point for him. He confronts the historical and cultural context of his own experience as a Black man in America. It forces him to re-examine his life, his struggles, his triumphs through a new lens.
It's like he's saying, I thought I knew who I was where I came from, but this experience has shown me that there's so much more to learn to understand.
Exactly. And that newfound awareness starts to seep into his work.
Yeah.
His comedy becomes even more layered, more nuanced. He's not just talking about his own personal experiences anymore. He's grappling with bigger issues like the legacy of colonialism, the complexities of race and identity in a global context.
It's almost like he's using his platform to educate, to provoke, to start a conversation about these difficult but important topics.
He understood the power of his voice, and he wasn't afraid to use it. He was willing to make people uncomfortable, to challenge their assumptions, to push them to think critically about the world around them. And that's what makes him such an important figure, not just in comedy, but in American culture as a whole.
And as he's reaching this creative peak, achieving mainstream success with stand-up specials, albums, film roles, his personal demons are still haunting him.
Right.
His drug use, his turbulent relationships, it all comes to a head in a pretty terrifying way.
The freebasing incident where he accidentally set himself on fire while under the influence of cocaine, that was a turning point. It was a wake-up call, a moment of reckoning.
Yeah. It's hard to read about that part of his life.
Right.
It's painful, it's scary, but it's also a stark reminder of the destructive power of addiction.
And Pryor doesn't shy away from the details.
Right.
He describes the incident, the pain, the recovery with brutal honesty. He's not looking for sympathy. He's just telling his story, warts and all.
Even after that experience, he doesn't shy away from those darker aspects of his life.
No.
He continues to grapple with addiction, with his relationships, his flaws. His reflections on these struggles are brutal, insightful, and always laced with that dark humor that became his trademark.
He finds a way to turn even his most painful experiences into something relatable, something humorous, that makes you think. He's saying, look, I messed up, I make mistakes, but I'm still here, I'm still trying to figure things out. And in that vulnerability, that honesty, he connects with audiences on a deeply human level.
And then life throws him another curveball. He is diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a debilitating disease that forces him to confront his own mortality.
Wow.
It's a heavy blow. Especially after everything he's been through. You have to wonder, how do you find the strength to keep going when faced with such a challenge?
It would be understandable for someone to give up, to succumb to despair. But Pryor, in his own way, chooses to fight.
Wow.
He continues to perform, showcasing incredible courage and vulnerability on stage, even as his body betrays him.
It's almost like the MS stripped away any pretense. He's completely exposed, raw, and honest in his later performances. There's a fragility there, but also a fierce determination to keep going, to keep connecting with his audience.
It's inspiring, isn't it? He doesn't let the disease define him. He finds a way to incorporate it into his act, to make light of it, to even find humor in the pain and limitations. He's showing us that even in the face of adversity, there's still room for laughter, for connection, for humanity.
There's also a sense of peace that emerges in his later years. He starts to mend broken relationships, seeks forgiveness, acknowledges the pain he's caused. It's like he's trying to make amends to find some sense of closure before it's too late.
It's a beautiful, bittersweet part of his story.
Yeah.
He's coming to terms with his past, with his legacy, with the impact he's had on the world. There's a sense of acceptance, of letting go of anger and resentment.
It's a reminder that we're all flawed, we all make mistakes. But it's never too late to try to make things right.
And Richard Pryor, even in his final years, continues to evolve. His later work is marked by introspection, defiance, and that trademark humor.
Yeah.
He's grappling with his own limitations, the realities of aging and illness. But he never loses that sharp wit, that ability to find the funny side of even the most difficult situations.
A powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit, to the transformative power of humor, and to the complexities of the Black experience in America. His story stays with you long after you finish the book. It makes you think, it makes you feel, and it definitely makes you laugh.
Yeah, it does. It really gets under your skin, doesn't it? Pryor's life was so raw, so honest, so incredibly human. And that's what we love about diving deep into these books, with you discovering these hidden gems and unpacking their meaning together.
Yeah. Richard Pryor's story is one that transcends the boundaries of comedy.
Absolutely.
It speaks to something much larger, the search for identity, the struggle for authenticity, the power of resilience in the face of adversity. Absolutely. And it's a reminder that humor can be a powerful tool for social commentary, for healing, for connection.
Yeah.
Pryor wasn't afraid to make people uncomfortable, to push boundaries, to use his voice to challenge the status quo.
He was a trailblazer, a game changer.
Yeah.
And his impact on comedy is undeniable. You can see his influence in so many comedians who came after him. Eddie Murphy, Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, the list goes on and on.
It does.
Yeah.
He gave them permission to be bold,
Yeah.
to be unapologetically themselves, to use their platform to speak truth to power. And that's a legacy that continues to inspire and empower us today.
Absolutely.
It really does.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Pryor's incredible life, we want to turn it over to you.
Yeah, what resonated with you most about his story? What insights did you gain about the Black experience in America? What are your thoughts on his legacy as a comedian and a cultural icon? We want to hear from you. Head over to our social media pages and share your thoughts. Let's keep this conversation going and continue to learn from each other.
And as we celebrate Black voices this month, we want to encourage you to explore the works of other incredible Black authors. There are so many powerful stories out there waiting to be discovered. What books by Black authors have moved you, inspired you, or challenged your perspective? Share your recommendations with us on social media. Let's amplify these voices and continue to broaden our understanding of the world through their unique perspectives.
Beautifully said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the life and legacy of Richard Pryor. We'll catch you next time for another fascinating exploration of a book you wish you had time to read.